Hello there, it's the doctor. I'm back with another YouTube disc golf video. Today I'm going to be doing a long overdue in the bag video. I haven't done one since my original in the bag video. I think it was like 5 years ago. Yeah, so it's been a long time. I thought it'd be the perfect opportunity as we've been all going through this crazy pandemic. And now that a lot of tournaments are starting to open back up, and I'm actually scheduled to play in one next weekend, that it would be something fun to do to go over what I'm currently bagging for this 2020 season, which, believe it or not, and it's crazy for me, has been pretty much the same for a while now. I've been sticking with the same, for the most part, 27 discs that are in my Fossa bag here. I have the Fossa, I believe it's the Tana Pro bag. Shout out to my buddy Z.D. Smith for selling it to me. Really nice bag. Typically I have 2 towels on it, but they're currently being washed. It can definitely hold probably up to like 30 discs, but 27 right now seems to be a good number for me. I'll be going over what I'm currently bagging, obviously, and why I like that disc and what I use it for. We'll start off with putters. I have been using the Wizard for probably, I believe 2 years now. Right now I'm using the not so pure white plastic Wizard, 175 grams each of these, and I use these strictly for putting, occasionally short up shots or pitch outs. Some people really like to drive with the Wizard, and I've seen a lot of people do it very, very well, but I stick with putting with them. Everybody pretty much knows, if you're a disc golf fan, that the Gateway Wizard is one of the most respected putters in the world. Slightly overstable. Before that, I was using these 2 Wizards. They're the exact same plastic. Pretty hard, a little stiff. These are legit pure whites, but I saw these recently, the not so pure whites, and thought, yeah, those are hot. Let me add them. Moving on, we have the side pocket here. I can put 2 discs in here. This is pretty much my super utility disc. It's a Prodigy A2, and it is in the 400G plastic. I have another red A2, but I've been going with this X out purple one for a while. This disc is, if you know, a lot of people, you know, Discraft, it's really taken off lately, that brand with Paul Macbeth going over to Discraft. So a lot of people are familiar with the Zone overstable approach disc. This is pretty similar. I would say it's a little bit more overstable though. So it's good for forehand shots, backhand shots where you need the disc to fade really, really early. But I use this is probably the disc typically that I use most in a round, other than my putting putters, obviously. And then I have a Prodigy PA2 in the 400G plastic. I believe it is a 3-speed, 3 glide, 0 turn, 1 fade. Pretty much a straight shooter. I like to use this one off the tee on shorter drives. Something that stays straight with a little bit of a fade at the end. Pretty much reliable for me. I have this little pouch up here that can hold up to 5 or 6 discs. I only put 4 in here. I have another Prodigy PA2. This one's pretty beat in, and it's a 300S plastic. This one I like for shorter to mid, like approach shots, where I need something pretty straight with a little bit of fade at the end. But yeah, as you can see, it's pretty beat in, but I like that, so it flies a little bit more straight than my 400 PA2. So this one off the tee, this one for approaches typically, but if it's a pretty short hole, I can whip this out on the tee and feel comfortable with it, as opposed to breaking out the 400G one. This was one of the newer additions to my bag recently. It is a Dynamic Discs guard, and to be quite honest, I'm not really sure what the plastic is. It's from the Bowling Green 2019 tournament. It came in the players pack, the huge 8 or 9 disc players pack at that tournament, the biggest amateur tournament in the world, I believe. I played in 2019 and 2018. Not this year, unfortunately, with the pandemic. But this thing is super, super straight, pretty flippy too, a lot of turn on it. I can throw this on a hyzer and it will flip up, stay straight, and sometimes even turn a little bit if I put a little bit too much yank on it. But that's something that I wanted in the bag, something with a little bit of turn that I can throw backhand and it will actually go right a little bit for me as a right-hander. And I have a Prodigy 400G plastic A4. This is another pretty straight disc. Pretty fast though for an approach disc. I can't remember what the speed is on it exactly, but I think it flies pretty much like a 5-speed, like a mid-range to be honest. I'll throw this off the tee when I need something to stay straight for quite some time. Maybe with a little bit of turn before gently coming back and fading out left for me. Really, really nice, really straight, and it's actually one of those rare discs that actually whistles when you throw it. Everybody, if you're a disc golf fan, you know you've thrown a disc at some point that for some odd reason it whistles like when you throw it. Some people love it, some people hate it. I like it. It reminds me of those Nerf Vortex balls. This is another staple in my bag. It is a MVP Discs Deflector in their Proton plastic. Got the sweet scorpion stamp on there. This thing's pretty similar to my A2. It's just faster and more fade. So anytime I need something, a little bit of extra distance, to where maybe I can't reach it with my A2 or I need something to fade even quicker, I'll break out the deflector. I primarily use this for forehand shots. Backhand, it fades so fast, so a lot of times I don't use it backhand. Forehand, heavy fade approach shots primarily with this thing, but I really like it. It's reliable, especially in the wind, because it's so overstable, it'll just fight right through the wind. Moving along here, we'll go with mid-ranges back all the way up to distance drivers. I have a Gateway Prophecy in their original HD plastic. This HD plastic is actually different than their final result. It feels a little bit more tacky, and I really like it. I wish they would have made a larger run of this original HD plastic. I actually bought it from the Gateway vendor at the Bowling Green AMs last year in 2019. The Prophecy is pretty much similar to a Rock from Innova. Straight, reliable fade at the end. This thing can go pretty far though for a mid-range. Definitely I can get it well over 300. I used to not really like throwing mid-ranges as much until I started throwing this puppy. So the Prophecy, and I know it is one of their Gateway's more popular discs outside of the Wizard. A lot of people know that Gateway is kind of considered a brand mostly for their wide selection of putters, but I think the Prophecy has kind of changed the game for them. A lot of good reviews have come in for this disc, so check out the Prophecy. Moving along, we have another Gateway disc actually, another mid-range. It is a Evolution Diamond Scout. It is a 6-speed mid-range, a little bit of a dome on it, not too much. Really, really straight disc. I think it's like a 6501. One of those typical mid-range point and shoot discs. I've actually started throwing it forehand, and now that I've been working on my forehand more here in the last few months, especially with discs that are more straight as opposed to being overstable. I can throw this forehand and it will stay like uber straight, just straight line, or I can get it to actually turn and stay left rather than coming back right. They actually don't make the Scout anymore, so this is one disc that I don't want to lose. It's really nice. I like it. I can use it for a variety of shots. So it's been in my bag for a while. The next disc is actually pretty similar to the Scout. I just think it's a little bit faster, even though it is the same speed as a 6. It's an Plastic Westside Warship. This thing I like using for tightly straight wooded shots. It has a lot of speed and a lot of glide. It can have a nice little S-curve on it, if you will. Similar to the Scout, but honestly I think it's a little bit more stable, but still something that will stay straight or get a nice S-curve out of it with some sneaky speed and glide for a mid-range. And the Plastic wears in pretty nice too, so maybe out of the bag, like a VIP Warship would be more stable. The Origio one beats in, so loses its stability, but that's actually kind of what I wanted. Fairway Driver here, the MVP Resistor. This is a 6-speed fairway driver. Primarily I use it for forehands. Anytime I need a shot off the tee or an approach shot, on especially like a long hole where my next shot's going to be pretty long if I want to get to the pin, instead of going with the deflector, I'll use the Resistor. The Resistor is a little bit less stable than the deflector, but it's faster, which helps so it's not as dumpy too soon like the deflector and won't fade out too quickly. But it definitely has a lot of bite on it and a lot of fade, backhand or forehand, but it's just a nice utility disc. Similar to maybe like a Firebird from Innova. Less speed obviously, but very, very flat. Definitely feels nice for a forehand shot. Another disc here that's similar for me, a little bit faster though. I've bagged it for a while, it's pretty beat in now. Opto Latitude 64 XXX. This thing's a 7-speed, 2 glide, 0 turn, 5 fade. This thing's beat in though pretty well because I bagged it for I think like 3 years on and off, but it's been in my bag for at least the last year and a half, I know. I use it for forehands primarily because it fades so heavily. But anytime I need something a little bit faster than the Resistor and maybe a little bit more fade to come in more soon than the Resistor, I'll pull out the XXX. Obviously the Resistor and XXX both really, really nice discs in the wind too, headwinds. Opto line, Latitude 64 Saint Pro. This is a recent addition to the bag, I suppose. Latitude 64 rates it as an overstable fairway driver, control driver. I disagree. I think it's more of a straight shooter, S-curve type of disc, which is nice. That's what I wanted. I bag a lot of overstable stuff, if you couldn't tell, so I wanted my fair share of straight discs and discs I can get backhand, because I primarily throw backhand to get a little bit of an S-curve, and this is something that does that. A lot of glide on this thing too. Good for wooded straight shots where maybe you need to snake around some trees for S-curves. But yeah, I like it. I bagged it on and off a few times, but the past few months I've left it in the bag and I'm starting to really like it. I don't throw it too much. I use it more at wooded courses. This disc has been in my bag for a very, very long time, and it is my most understable disc by far. The Prodigy F7 Proto Edition 400G plastic. The F7 is Prodigy's most understable of their F series, their fairway drivers. I believe it's like a -4 turn, 1 fade, 7 speed. Pretty much I just use this when I don't feel comfortable throwing a forehand on a hole off the tee and I need something to turn right really quick as a backhand turnover shot. I'll pull out the F7. Really good for wooded courses again, similar to the Scout and the Warship, but just when I need something to turn a little bit more quickly and something that's a little bit faster. This is one of those discs, if I put release on a hyzer and just put a ton of crank on it, it will totally flip up and over and hold the right turn for a right-hand backhand thrower like myself. I have, this will look similar to that F7, but it's not. It's a Prodigy 400G plastic F2 Proto. The F2, if you're familiar with the Innova T-Bird, I would say it's pretty much the same as that disc. 7-speed fairway driver roughly with 2 fade, 0 turn, pretty straight with a nice bite at the end. I don't really throw it forehand, primarily backhand on holes that are probably, between 300, 275, 325, somewhere in that range where I need something to stay straight that comes back left a little bit at the end as a right-handed backhand thrower. This 400G plastic from Prodigy is definitely my favorite too. I liken it to the Champion plastic from Innova. Beats in very, very nicely. The life of these discs is great. It's pretty much going to hold its stability for a very, very long time. Not too slick in the hand. I really like the 400G plastic from Prodigy. And here's another 400G plastic from Prodigy. It is an X-Out H1, which I actually call it the Smoky Prodigy, the Butterfly Prodigy. You can see it's the smoky butterfly outline. At least it looks like that to me. The H1 is a hybrid disc. I think it's like an 8-speed with about 3 fade. So pretty beefy. I use it forehand and backhand. Anytime there's a pretty decent headwind where I need something to fade back left or right for me, whether I'm throwing it backhand or forehand pretty quick. I use it more frequently on open courses rather than wooded because the fade comes in so heavy and so quickly. Gateway Discs First Run HD Blade. I talked about earlier the HD plastic and their original run being more tacky. This is the finished product. It's a little bit tacky, but it feels a little similar to, I don't know, it's weird. It's like a hybrid of like Star and Champion plastic. At least that's how I feel for Innova discs. It's one of my favorite plastics now from Gateway. They've really upped their game with their plastics in recent years because if you remember, their plastics originally were pretty bad, to say the least. They did not feel nice in the hand. This blade, this thing's been in the bag for a long time. I only throw this thing forehand. Super flat. This thing is pretty much like a Firebird, a little bit less stable though. If I throw it hard enough, I can get a little bit of turn on a forehand out of the hand before it kicks into overdrive with that heavy fade. Obviously really good in headwinds too. But this thing, for something that has that much fade, it gets up there. It's pretty fast. This disc is pretty similar to the blade. It's the Dynamic Discs Criminal in their Lucid plastic. The Criminal is a 10-speed, kind of like a hybrid distance driver, fairway driver. I throw this one forehand and backhand. Forehand, if I need something to go a little bit faster and a little bit farther than that blade, I'll whip out the Criminal. Backhand, if it's heavy headwind, out in the open, I need to push something, let it just ride out and come crashing in. The Criminal is usually a pretty decent option for me as well. Innova Star Savant, 175 grams, which I failed to mention. I pretty much bag everything between 170 and 175 grams. Most of these discs I would hazard to guess they're all like 175 gram. The Savant, I kind of got this on a whim from my earnings from the Bowling Green tournament last year. It's a pretty straight flying fairway driver 9-speed with a decent bit of fade at the end. If you throw it hard enough, there'll be a little bit of turn out of the hand, but it's going to reliably come back left or right, whether you're a lefty or a righty. I can actually throw this thing pretty far though for a 9-speed for me. I don't throw it forehand, all backhand for me with the Savant. Really like the Savant in wooded shots too, with a little, similar to that F2, but if I need something to get a little bit more distance, I'll pull out the Savant instead. We have a Discmania TD, the turning driver. And the turning driver is, I think it's a 10-speed, like a -2 turn, 1 fade. So this is one of my more flippy discs, but it's not like crazy flippy. I can throw it pretty hard and it'll turn a little bit out of the hand before kind of coming back gently. I like to use this one, believe it or not, on more open courses where I just need something to stay pretty straight for, 350 feet, 400 feet, somewhere around there, straight. It's actually pretty flat for such a flippy disc, but it's I don't know, it has a really unique rim, and my friends and I have always thought the same thing. It just, I don't know, it's a unique feeling disc. So pick one up. It's a nice disc, especially as a beginner. Once you're starting to develop more arm speed and you get into those higher speed discs, this would be a good one to get because it is a little bit understable, and you'll actually get a little bit of an S curve on it as you're building up your arm strength. This is one of the more recent additions to my bag. It is an Discs Star Arkin. And believe it or not, wow, what do you know, it's 175 grams. The Arkin is a super straight, pretty much max speed driver, 11 speed. I've actually been using it for forehands a lot, now that I'm trying to develop myself into throwing better, more straight forehand shots as opposed to something like the Blade or Criminal that is going to fade pretty hard, pretty quickly. The Arkin, I have to be a little bit careful when I do release it on a forehand because sometimes it'll just stay on that left line and just not really come back. So I definitely have to put some hyzer on it out of the hand. I do throw a backhand too though, and it's definitely more straight than the TD. Similar to the TD, but faster and I'd say a little bit more flippy. I like this on wooded courses or tightly lined shaped holes. Something I'm just getting more familiar with throwing and I'm really digging. Next two discs here, I'm going to pull them both out because they're the same disc, just different plastics. A lot of people are big fans of the Destroyer from Innova, but I'm a little bit weird in a way. I like the Star, this is a Star plastic Innova disc T-Devil, and this is a Champion plastic T-Devil. The T-Devil is similar to a Destroyer other than it's one less fade than a Destroyer, so it's obviously a little bit less beefy than a Destroyer, and it has a bigger rim for sure. A lot of people don't throw the T-Devil. I know on Infinite Discs right now, they're totally sold out of the T-Devil. I was lucky to find this in Austin, Texas, at a really nice disc golf store, used. This Champion one I bought 2 years ago. It was from the Las Vegas Challenge. I've bagged the T-Devils for a really long time, and it's hard to explain really even why I like throwing them. It's one of those discs I've gotten so familiar with throwing that I just trust. I can throw them about 400 feet, maybe a little farther if I rip it, with more speed as a 12 speed, and stay straight with a little bit of fade to the end. Fights the wind really well too for something that's pretty close to being pretty neutral in terms of turn and fade. Typically headwind isn't the big issue for the T-Devil, but this Star one, the Champion one, I throw strictly backhand, and the Star one, this one's a little bit more overstable than the Champion plastic one, believe it or not. This star one I throw primarily forehand, and it's my go-to forehand driver on holes where it's 350 feet probably over, and I need something to stay straight for a while before gently coming back right for me. And I've been throwing this a lot forehand lately and seem to be getting better at throwing it forehand, and I trust it a lot. The T-Double is by far the favorite disc in my bag, and it's the one disc that I can't see leaving my bag, other than the Wizard. Probably ever. There was only a brief period where I didn't bag a T-Double, and I started bagging a West Side Disc Sword, and it's the same numbers, but I went back to the T-Double. Everybody knows you get in a groove with one disc, and you just trust it, and you just ride or die with it, baby. I actually just put this disc back in the bag today, believe it or not. I took out my Champion Boss. So I don't know if this will stay in the bag. The Champ Boss might make a reappearance, but the West Side Discs Warship is back in the bag. This thing, as the name says, it's a horse. This thing is super beefy. I'm only going to use it on shots where backhand or forehand, I need something that's going to fade quickly but fast. But it's such a fast disc that it can cover a lot of ground pretty quickly despite the heavy fade. So holes that are 350 and over is just something where I need to get around something quickly. Really, I'm using this too on days where it's super windy and I'm in a massive headwind, because the Warship will not get turned over. It's so beefy and so reliable. It's going to fight right through that wind. It's the Warhorse after all. Alright, two more discs here. The Discraft Z Plastic Nuke. As you can tell, this thing is beat in. I've bagged a nuke for a long time. Actually, this nuke is the first ever disc I got an ace with, and it's funny, if you watch my in the bag video from like 5 years ago, this was in there, and it has only been back in this bag for a few months now because I lost my other nuke that had a sweet elephant stamp from the Elephant Open. I can't remember where it was. I got it in a misprint Discraft box. My friend traded me the disc actually. I was bummed when I lost that thing because the stamp was sweet, but it's the same plastic. It's a nuke, really reliable. But this one's pretty beat in that it's not as overstable. But this and the next disc are the discs that I whip out of the bag when I need to get as much distance as humanly possible that I can get in terms of distance. Not going to be using them typically on wooded holes. Out in the open holes where I can just rip it, let her fly. My farthest throw ever actually was with a nuke, and it was a little bit over 500. I haven't gotten a throw that far in a long time, but yeah, this disc I can regularly get over 400. But like I said, compared to other nukes, because this one's so beat in and my previous one was the same way, I can get a little bit of turn on it too without having to release it with anhyzer. I can throw it straight. If I throw it super hard, it'll get a little bit of turn before starting to fade back a little bit, which that's nice. Everybody knows if you get S-curve on a disc, that's how you're going to get the disc to get more distance typically. And then speaking of S-curve, I have an Optoline Latitude 64 Night. This thing, it's an understable, wide-rimmed driver, if you can see. Really fast, but really flippy. This is not a disc to use in a headwind, no sir. You're one to use it in a tailwind or just situations where it's a calm wind. But if you let this thing go, man, release it with a little bit of hyzer, hard, it'll flip up, carry an S-line, and just keep zooming and come back. This thing goes really far. I've bagged it on and off, but it's back in the bag, and I've been really liking what I've seen from it, especially on far holes. If I get a little bit of an S-curve shot, yeah, this thing can regularly get over 400. I'll use the Knight as opposed to the Nuke when I need a really far shot to stay straight for a longer period of time, or something where maybe it's a hole just simply S-curves a little bit. So the Nuke more so shots where the basket isn't as straight off the tee, because it has more fade at the end than the Knight. If the Knight, I mean, if you're not careful and you have a wonky throw, right hand, backhand, left hand, backhand, it doesn't matter. It's not going to come back. It'll go left or right and it won't come back. It'll probably turn into a cut roller, which you don't want, typically. I wouldn't recommend throwing it forehand. It's a wide rim, but it's a little bit slim on the inside, if you can see my fingers. And it's just so flippy, but for backhands, yeah, I definitely recommend the Knight. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up here for the 2020 in the bag with the Doctor. Glad to be back with another video. Take it easy, everybody. Have a great day. Goodbye.